Hi guys, this is Janice with Needles and Fashion, and I'm here to give you a tutorial on how to make the maxi dress that's featured on my blog www.needlesandfashion.blogspot.com. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so we're going to start with the supplies that you're going to need for this tutorial. First thing you're going to need is McCall's pattern 6886. We're going to be working from view A. You're going to need your scissors, your measuring tape. I have my gray ruler as well as my French curve, my scissors and rotary blade, whichever one is more comfortable for you. And I have my marking chalk. I actually used this pattern to make another project, so therefore I only have half of this piece here. So I went ahead and drafted out the rest. Now you can use the entire piece for view A, but I will say if you want to accomplish the look that I featured on my blog, then you're going to have to cut the dress a little bit shorter. For me, I want the entire length from my shoulder down to the bottom of where I wanted the short part of the maxi skirt to be exactly 32 inches. So even though I drafted out the remainder of my dress, I went ahead and made sure that it equals 32 inches. That's going to be, for me, shorter than the pattern actually allows for. You can do one of two things. You can either cut it ahead of time, or you can wait till you get midway through the construction and try on the garment and see if you want to make it either longer or shorter. To get the look, in my opinion, you're going to have to make it a little bit shorter. View A goes just above your knee. This pattern is actually going to be more towards between the knee and the thigh. So just want to go ahead and point that out. So I went ahead and drafted. I'm working with the front piece right now. Because I cut both of these pieces at the waistline, there's a 17-inch difference between that point and the bottom of where I'm going to cut. So I'm going to go ahead and grab some pattern weights, which is another thing you need. I'm going to put it here so that this pattern doesn't move. And I'm going to go ahead and cut out the front piece. Now, I'm doing this dress with the piece of fabric that I bought from G Street Fabrics. I bought 4 yards of it. I don't think I'm going to need all of it, but I will say you're probably going to need close to 3 yards for this project, depending on your size. I think I'm going to use close to at least 3 yards. So I have my front piece cut out. What I'm going to do is at the actual waistline, I'm going to make a dart there. And then I'm just going to snip the other darts for the pattern. I'm going to fold that up and set that aside. I'm going to go ahead and prep my fabric for the back piece. Then we're going to get into the waistband and then finally the long skirt. So we'll be right back. I'm going to go ahead and prep my back piece. I went ahead and drafted in the rest of the dress. Again, exactly 17 inches from the waistline. I'm going to go ahead and cut that out now. I'm going to make my dart again at the waistline and then cut the darts for the pattern. And both of these pieces are cut on the fold as per the manufacturer instructions. I'm going to go ahead and fold this up and set it to the side. I'm just going to cut off this scrap so that I can work evenly with my fabric, because the next thing I'm going to do is the waistband and then the sleeve. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is cut my waistband, because I'm going to cut it right here from the top. So I'm just going to line in my fabric here. And what I'm going to do, smooth that out. And I'm going to cut this fabric even. Across the top. Okay, just smoothing this out really quick. So for the waistband, I want a 1-inch waistband, so therefore I'm going to cut 2.5 inches wide so that I can fold it over. This Great Line ruler is 2 inches wide, so I'm just going to use this as a guide, and I'm just going to eyeball the cut. Now my waist is 29 inches, so I'm going to cut exactly 14.5 inches so that I can get exactly 25. The reason why I'm doing that is because this is a stretch fabric and I want it to fit kind of snug. So I'm going to cut it exactly 29 inches, which is going to be 14.5 from here because it's on the fold. So I'm going to mark the 14.5, and I'm just going to eyeball an additional 1/2 inch here. Cut that out. Okay, so I have my waistband, see it stretch here, and I'm going to sit this aside. The next thing we're going to do is go ahead and cut the sleeve. Now I'm going to fold. There's a line here that tells you where to cut for A and E for the short sleeve. I'm just going to fold my pattern up to that point so that I don't have to cut this pattern, this leaf. I'm just going to fold it to that line. And I'm going to cut 2 of these out. Going to press this really quick. Now this is a full short sleeve. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it out the regular way. And then I am going to make adjustments to it. Okay, so I have this short sleeve cut out here. Now I don't want a straight sleeve. I actually want it to be somewhere between a normal short sleeve and a cap sleeve. So what I'm going to do is going to remove my pattern here. Set that aside. I'm going to take my curved ruler and I'm just going to sketch out a curve to this. And I'm going for about an inch at the midpoint. And I'm going to line it up with the actual corner of this fabric. Yeah, I'm going to go 2 inches. Coming right back down to this point. I'm going to cut that out. Now I have an altered sleeve. So I'll be back and we'll start back on the skirt and go answer my door. I went ahead and cut a 43-inch skirt, which is my measurements from my navel to the floor because I'm going to be wearing this with flat shoes. Plus 2 inches or so to give me some room for the hemming of the waistband and for the hemming of the bottom of the skirt. So this fabric is a 60-inch wide fabric. I went ahead and cut off the salvage edge, and I'm going to go ahead, since I cut my piece out, which is the length of my, the width of my fabric by the length of 42 inches. I'm going to go ahead and cut off the folded edge so I can have 2 pieces. I'm going to go ahead and make the measurements for the bottom part of my skirt. Now again, my waist is 29 inches, so I'm going to go ahead and mark the 14 and a half inches. Now, before I do that, I'm going to measure fabric here. Just 32. This must have been a 64-inch wide fabric. So it's 32, so I'm just going to make a clip here in the middle, the 16-inch mark, so I can know where my midpoint is. I'm going to place my ruler down, and half of 14 and a half is 7 1/4 inches. So I'm going to put the 7 1/4 on my midpoint where I marked. And I'm just going to make a mark here. Actually, I'm going to add an inch to that, so I'm going to do 7 1/2. Excuse me, 7 3/4. There we go. So with 7 3/4 at my midpoint to allow for my seam allowance, I'm just going to go ahead and mark that over to the 15-inch. And I'm just going to take my ruler and cascade this down to the corner so that I can have a full skirt at the bottom. I'm just going to go right to the corner of this fabric. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And I'm going to go ahead and cut that off. Go. So I have the bottom of my skirt cut, as you can see here. I'm just going to fold this set it aside. So now we have our skirt, we have our waistband, we have our sleeve, our front and our back pieces. My back here, here's my front. Now it's time to go ahead and go over to the machine. So we're going to go ahead and switch over, and we're going to start with the construction. The first thing we're going to do is add the waistband to the skirt, the long skirt. And then we're going to attach that long skirt at the notches I made at the waistband to the dress. Once we attach the skirt front and back to the front and back of the short dress, we're going to go ahead and sew the two pieces together, and then we'll add the sleeves. So we'll be right back. So before you start on your bottom skirt, I went ahead and made a dart or a little cut 5 inches down from the top on both sides. See that there? And that's going to give me a stopping point from where I'm going to hem the two sides together. So with a normal 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and you should probably pin this, but I'm just going to go ahead and sew it like this. I'm just going to come down to that little dart I made. I'm going to go ahead and do the other side. Okay, so I got my sides hemmed together. 5 inches, seam together on the side for 5 inches. I'm going to go ahead and start with the preparation of adding the waistband to this piece. Once we do that, then we'll work on actually hemming the rest of the skirt on the sides. So for this portion, I'm going to go ahead and use my serger. I went ahead and press the waistband in half. And I'm going to go ahead with my serger and finish off these edges in preparation to add to the skirt. I'm doing this because this fabric has a curled edge to it because it's a jersey knit. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. If you don't have this, then you can do a zigzag stitch because this is a waistband that's going to stretch. Okay, so now that that's done, I'm going to go ahead and go back over to the table and remeasure this and attach it to the skirt. Okay, so I went ahead and seamed the end of my waistband together. So I'm just going to cut that off close to the stitch. Now, one thing you have to keep in mind is after you press this in half and you serge the edges, you want to check for the size because it's a jersey knit. It stretches when you press it. Now, I was able to cut about 5 inches off here, and it's still my size, and it still stretches as well. So you want to make sure that you check for that adjustment. I'm going to start turning this skirt right sides out. And I'm going to pin the seam on my waistband. With the seam facing out to the side seam of my skirt. Pin that there, making sure those seams align. I'm just going to stretch this skirt out for size. And I'm going to find where my other side seam is. I'm going to pin it. So I'm going to pin that there. And I'm going to take it over to the sewing machine and attach this waistband to the bottom of the skirt. Okay, so it's time to go ahead and attach my skirt to my waistband. I'm going to use a very small seam allowance for this, about 1/4 of an inch. I'm just checking here, since I didn't pin it all the way around, just making sure this aligns at the end and it's not curled. This is something you can also do with your serger. And I'm just stretching it here to make sure, very slightly, to make sure that everything lines up, because I have it pinned at the other side seam. So I'm just making sure that matches up. Just aligning this back up again. And I'm just going to check for my stretch here. So I'm coming back around the bend. And really, when you're doing this, you should just go ahead and pin it. Something about me and pinning is not, friends, and it doesn't always work for me like that. I really need to pin more. I'm going to take it down a little bit right here because I put it a little bit of a dart a little too far in there. There we go. Okay, so now that I went ahead and anchored this down, you can see my waistband is attached here. I'm just going to go back over this again with a zigzag stitch. Let's see, let's do this one here. stretching it ever so slightly here. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and clean up my threads here, and then we're going to go over and start on the... Okay, so in preparation of doing the short dress, we're going to go ahead and identify our darts that we made at the waistline. You're going to take your ruler and some invisible ink and draw your waistline. This is going to be on the right side of the fabric. You're going to do that for both the front and the back. Then you're going to take those two pieces and we're going to go ahead and pin them at the top, which is done here. We're going to take it to the machine and seam these two at the shoulders, and then we'll move on to adding the sleeve to this dress. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and attach our shoulders together. Ooh, somebody still got the zigzag on. Okay, so we got that side done. We're going to go ahead and move on to the other side. Okay, so we got that side done. What I'm going to do is turn this inside out, right sides out. And I am going to attach my sleeve before I close off the side seams. So what I'm going to do is, when you're working with sleeves, typically I just fold this in half so I can know exactly where my midpoint is. So I'm just folding that in half. Grab my pins here, so I know where that is. I'm just going to, let's see, make a tiny little slit here. Just know where that's at. I'm going to find the shoulder seam that I just made. And here's the casing for the sleeve. I'm going to pin that little slit right there into that shoulder seam there. I'm going to pin that. And I'm going to find the end here. And the end of my sleeve. I'm just going to line that up there. And that. I'm going to do the same thing with the other side. At the top here. And the top of my sleeve. Just going to pin that there. And that's the only 3 pins that I'm going to use. So, to attach these, I'm going to go ahead and start here on the left side. Normal 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now that I got that anchored, I'm going to go ahead and just align it here with the rest of the top. Stretch it where I need to make sure it aligns. Stopping just to check for my stretch. It's easy to do sleeves with the stretch material. Working with a non-stretch material, then you have to cut little slits in it to give it ease, but you don't have to do that with a stretch knit. Now, normal people actually pin this all together, but you know me. I'm going to hold this here, making sure this is aligned. And stopping, checking for my stretch, making sure everything is aligned here. And once I anchor past my shoulder seam, check for my stretch again. Okay, now we're working on the other side. Give it a little stretch there. There we go. Making sure this is aligned. All the way down to the end. So when you do it this way, you're pretty much sewing your sleeve flat, and when you turn it over here, you have your sleeve, right? All right, so we're going to go ahead and repeat that for the other side. So I'm going to fold this sleeve in half, so I can know where my midpoint is. And I'm going to make my little slit in there. And I'm going to pin that to the shoulder seam. So find my center seam here. I'm going to go ahead and pin it. I'm going to go ahead and pin this other side. And on to the other one. All right, so got that pinned there. Now I'm going to start from the side again and sew that right on over. attach here. And voila, we got our other sleeve attached. Look at that. So next thing we're going to go ahead and do is pin and sew the side seams. So give me 1 minute. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and begin pinning our dress from the sleeve down to the side. So our first thing I'm going to do is align the side seams here. Get that pinned. Our sleeve. Now we're going to work our way down. Going to start here with our waistband. All right, where we made our slit for and our line for the long skirt portion. I'm going to move on to this side before I go down any further. Line those seams. And that. Top of the sleeve. Align the waist dart that I made. And we can move on down. Pin there. On here. The other side. And down bottom here. Now we're ready to go over to the machine. Sew these together. So we're going to start at the right. I'm going to be sewing this with the 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Open that seam up. Okay, I'm going to move on to the other side. open up that seam there at the bottom. I really should have pressed it out. Okay, so we got our side seams together and our dress is taking form. What you want to do is try this on and make sure that it fits very well. If not, go ahead and make the adjustments that you would like. Then what you want to do after that is go ahead and finish off your seams with the serger. If you any hemming and the adding of the additional skirt, what you want to do is try your dress for fit. So you want to have a fit very similar to this, maybe a little bit more snug, because the second skirt is going to be very loose. So you want to try on the dress because naturally 6886 is a pattern that fits kind of loose to the body when you're cutting your actual size. So you want to slim down. When you're making these adjustments, you want to start from that dart you made for the waist and where you drew your line, and then slim going down from there. You want to make sure that you have the same adjustment on both sides. So if you're going in from a 1/4 inch down to 1 inch at the bottom, make sure you're doing that on both sides. So you're going to keep doing that until you get a good fit. Then you're going to go ahead and serge your finishes, or, you know, make whatever finishes you want to your seam. Once you do that, then you're ready to proceed on to the next step, which is adding the long skirt to this dress. All right, let's go. For the tricky part, we have everything done on our skirt. What we're going to do is, you know, this is a time, you know, if you're going to make any last changes, you want to go ahead and do that. And I did. I went ahead and made a wider waistband for my skirt, considering the fact that I'm going to have to hem it to the short dress. So this is actually 5 inches. Folded in half, so it's 2.5 inches with the hem, so I got about 2 inches open. Once I hem this to the dress, I'm going to have about 1 inch, 1.5 inches open. So that's the reason why I did that. So what I'm going to do is turn my skirt right sides in. I'm going to grab my dress here from the bottom, and I'm going to start pinning all the way across the dress. So I'm going to line up my side seam, with the side seam of my skirt. And I'm going to pin that. Now again, I have my line here, so I have a straight edge for me to pin against. Just going to pin that there. Make sure I'm just going through those 2 layers of fabric. Okay, so I got that part. I'm going to go over to the other side seam and pin that. Then we'll go ahead and do the middle. So finding my line here, I got my side seam. Hold those together. I'm going to pin. Okay, so now we have both of our side seams pinned. I'm going to double check this one. seams, I see. There we go. Down a little bit. Repin this one. And I'm just going to check for sizing here, make sure everything is intact. Yep. Okay. So I'm going to stretch this out a little bit. As you can see, it's flush here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew across this line. Now I'm sewing about 1/8 of an inch above that waistline, right? And I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, lay it flat here, sew very close to the edge all the way around the dress. So let's get dressed. I have my side seams pinned and I can just see my waistline that I made. So I'm going to go ahead with sewing very close to the edge. So keeping my skirt aligned with that waist line that I made on my dress. I'm just readjusting it as it's going around. Now, if you don't feel comfortable doing it this way, you definitely want to pin it. But it can be rather difficult. If I have any regrets about this dress, which I'm sure it's going to turn out, you know, just as beautiful as I envision it, I probably would have attached this portion to the front and back of the dress before I close the side seams. That may prove to be a little bit easier for a beginner. So I'm going to definitely write up some instructions on the blog on how to do it that way. And I still have line of sight of my line. Lining up my side seams. Now, if you want to know the way I have it positioned, the bottom of the short skirt is on the inside of my machine because it has less fabric than a long skirt, so that's the way that I chose to place it on the machine. Slight stretch here. Now I'm going to, since I'm coming around, I'm going to check my spacing here. That pin, I don't need that anymore. Alright, so I'm pulling my side seam here. It's showing me just enough, just about how much stretch I need to give to my garment. And if you can see that there, you can see my blue line, which is my guide. Pull this just a little bit. Here we go. Now, if you can't see this, I do apologize, but I'm following that blue line that I made for my waist so I can make sure that my long skirt is level with my short dress, that we don't have any high-low thing going on here. And I'm coming on to where I began, and I'm just making sure I got the appropriate stretch here. And we are done. So I'm going to take this off. I'm going to flip this down and see what we got here. So this is pretty much how the skirt comes out. I'm going to go ahead and press this and do my last hem on the end, and then we'll get to see how the finished product. Here's the finished product. I'm very happy with this came out, the way this dress came out. It looks almost exactly like the inspiration picture that I used to make it. So here it is. I hope you guys have the same experience and following this tutorial as I did. I did learn a lot of things. Definitely a couple of things I would probably change should I make this again. But anyway, for now, I'm happy with the way it turned out. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. This is Janice with Needles and Fashions, and I'll see you guys soon.